All right, so let's get straight to the business of this. All right.
Okay, sir. Thank you for having me too.
So, like I said, we're looking at church leadership, politics, and governance in Nigeria. I want to start with a popular verse of scripture, Proverbs 29 verse 2. Bible says, "When the righteous rule, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the
Yeah.
people grow. When the righteous strive, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people grow." So we are looking at the role that the church has to play in governance and leadership in Nigeria. I have quite a few questions uh, which I'd like us to consider in depth as much as we have time. Okay. So the church is a major stakeholder in turning out leaders for key positions across this nation, right? I believe that the church shouldn't be standing aloof. The church shouldn't be spectators, observers only when it comes to turning out leaders, especially in key governmental positions. Uh, if you look at the happening, the landscape of leadership governance in Nigeria in this period, we will find an obvious lack of people who are upholding Christian values. And it is a
Yeah.
major concern for me to ask, as the church not realize her power, as the church not come to terms with her importance in bringing that together. Because for me, I think over time, our concentration has been providing leaders only in the ecclesia, pastors, evangelists, um, being our major focus over time. And it looks as if we are only dominating in that regard. When it comes to policymakers, industry movers, key decision makers that will impact the life and well-being of citizenry, it seems as if the church has taken a backseat to it. I don't know your opinion on that, so we can start from there.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the church has done well in producing church leadership. And yes, because we have not really understand the scope of what the mandate is. Yes, the GOE mandate is divided into three phases. And one of it is world evangelism. Yes, the word evangelism, letting people come to the knowledge of Christ. The second one is discipleship, that is the system of training people. And the third aspect of that is territorial transformation. These days we need to redefine the narrative that the church is not a nuisance to society. The church has impact beyond the church walls. And that is why the scripture makes us to understand that Jesus said we are the salt of the earth, and that we are also the light of the earth, of the world. But in verse 16, he said, let your light. So we have a responsibility to permit the light to shine or not to shine. So the church has done well in producing, but the church has not focused on the territorial transformation. And that is why we need to come back to what is the church, the formation of the church. And we need to look beyond the gathering of believers and see that the church is a spiritual system of influence. You agree with me that we have the seven mountain of influence, and the church is one of it. Spirituality, and the church is beyond just attending, is a training. When we begin to see church as an institution that is built, that is ordained by God for men transformation and society transformation, we maximize our purpose more than when we're just when we are in church and we are leading ourselves, we are praying. We should see that, oh, we are agent of transformation. We are sent with a mandate not just to evangelize the world, but to train and shift the mindset of people towards national transformation.
All right, thank you very much. That's quite a powerful introduction. And until the church realizes that our important portfolio is beyond spiritual growth and influence,
Yes,
we continue to suffer this kind of crisis where we have people, but it seems that we are voiceless, where our impact will only be limited to just within the four walls of the church. And it's high time we awaken to such responsibility. Now, if we look at scenarios of the Bible, we look at the case study of Daniel, the case study of Mordecai, the case study of Esther, the case study of Joseph, we'll find out that they were not just spiritually inclined, they focused on national transformation. And they came up with reforms. Joseph came up with reforms that led to economic redemption, like Mordecai, like of Daniel, right? So it seems as if in this generation or generations before now, our focus is just to raise people who are spiritually focused. And if you interview the average undergraduate on campus and then talk about purpose, talk about leadership, 99% or 90% of the time, the focus is just within the four walls of the church. So what do you think is responsible for this limited, mind scope, mindset? If you go to campuses and you're asking, you talk about purpose, you talk about leadership, you talk about this kind of our regular conversation. Most of the time, the focus is just on how to be evangelists, it is important how to be pastors. We are not looking at key decision industry movers. What do you think is responsible, and what do you think is responsible?
Wow, that's a good thing to look at. Now, the question is, how well a people behave is influenced by who mentor them and the message, the content of the training. Now, most people have been taught that when you are to be useful to God, you are to serve God, you are to go into ministry. But for us, it's not a complete truth. Not all preachers, not all teachers or preachers or those who have passion for God are called into a full-time ministry. There's a way I put it that preaching is not the only way to serve God. And this is when we need to sit down and check the content of the message we are communicating as a church. Now there's a gap. We have been taught that if you want to be, if you have passion for God, you are praying, you are fasting, you are studying, that you'll be fit for full-time ministry. And because nobody has taught us that ministry goes beyond staying on pulpit, that preaching is not the only way which you serve God, that you can be in the marketplace, you can be in the media, you can be in the school, the educational system, and influence. No, we have not been taught about the scope of leadership that talks about productivity, influence. So there's a gap in knowledge. There's a gap in knowledge, and that is why we are trusting that the new set of the church leadership we have now, they are already doing their best in making us to realize that, hey, ministry, serving God is beyond preaching. That preaching is not the only way to serve God, because that has even cost a lot in the church. When you have talented people that have seen preaching as the only way to serve God, they go and start up their ministry, and without being genuinely called. So we have fights, division, but we need to bring a new level of understanding that, hey, preaching is not the only way to serve God. You can be effective in the church, maybe as a worker, and also be a influencing system. Making you can go into, these days, yes, people have believed that, okay, there was a time, if you want to go to heaven, if you want to do this, don't dabble into politics and whatever. But we need to bring our attention, because as you have said earlier, that when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. So we need to be intentional that, okay, there's a major gap here. Then we need to be intentional about training, so that we can build the next generation of transformational leader with the right message. That, oh, God wants you in different places to shine as light, to influence system, to be a decision maker. He wants you to grow in your career so that you can make quality decisions. So we need to be intentional. So there's a gap. There's a gap of knowledge which have been taught, but we need to come back to the basis and re-edit the training content, so that we can produce a set of believers that are effective outside beyond the church walls.
Okay, thank you very much. You touched on something. I have three questions I want to ask in that regard, in terms of knowledge, in terms of people. So I don't know how to start. Let me start by asking: is it a knowledge of principle issue, or is it a heart that's a boldness? Mordecai said to Esther, "If you do not speak up at this time, salvation will rise up for the Jews, and then you and your father's household will be consumed." Now, that and then Esther took a bold move to confront the king. Now, is it the knowledge of principle issue or a heart or implementation issue? That's why we are having this leadership gap. When you look at, since you have mentioned the subject of politics and the key positions, let me start by asking: is it that we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the information, or we don't have the people who are bold enough to step forward and shine as light in these sectors?
Okay, let's start. It's not okay. It is knowledge that gives confidence. Knowledge gives confidence. When you know something, it gives you confidence. Now, it's the basis is that these people have not been mentored or trained holistically, and that has produced inefficiency in what we are seeing today. Now, in the case of Mordecai and Esther, we can say that Mordecai has done his best to train Esther to be a leader. And what happened was, at that time, she needs to rise to the occasion of what it takes. But the journey starts with the right mentor, the right teaching, the right fundamental belief being explained, and then it will provide efficiency. Then at that point where they are lacking behind, you are there to send a word of encouragement. You are there to encourage them that, hey, you need to stand up. You need to be, I was reading a portion of Bible this morning. It said to Joshua, be strong and courageous. Now, some people have the potential within them. They have been trained, but they need that push. They need to receive that courage. They need to reach somebody to say, okay, hey, you can do it. Now let's look at the story of Deborah and Sisera. Sisera, yes, when he was afraid to go to battle, that woman need to put a push and say, hey, you need to do it. You need to rise at this time. So sometimes there's a 40 in knowledge, and if that has been covered, then there's need for a push and encouragement to say, okay, you need to, and also what makes them not to act may not be maybe that they do not understand the time and season they are at that particular time. They may be putting in a nonchalant attitude that okay, it does not concern me. That is why Mordecai have to send that message to Esther. Hey, you cannot keep quiet at this moment. This is the time you need to rise. So there is a training part. There is a point where you have to steer. You have to send a word of encouragement. You have to send a word of action. That oh, you need to take action at this point. You need to, that is why mentoring our next generation is not one a time. It is not one time and not again. We have to, it's a continuous process. It's a continuous checking in and checking out. There's a times where Nathan, the prophet, we also go to David and correct him. So there is need for review. There's need for us to constantly check on them so that, oh, yes, some of them may be doubting their ability, but your presence, the presence of their mentor, the presence of their leader, their role model will help them to say, oh, I can do it. You get what I'm saying? So I don't know that I've answered that question.
Yes, I think that answers the question. Again, I would feel, yeah, there's a knowledge problem, there's a principle issue, and there's also the implementation issue because, leadership requires boldness, requires being willing to go against the norm. And I feel like sometimes it is just like you mentioned, laziness. And I don't know if I'm going to attribute it to fear or just being safe. Most people are concerned about their reputation, their name, than about lasting impact, and then creates a disconnect. They now look as if the church has people, but they are voiceless. Now look as if the church has people, but we don't have impact. I'm not making impact in terms of leadership and problem. Okay, and the whole issue we are facing, especially in our country. The next question I want to ask you, I think you have also answered it partially, but let me just ask you, have we produced enough people to occupy key positions in Nigeria? I'm not talking about governors, I'm not talking about presidents. I'm talking about we have ministers, we have commissioners, we have councils. These are people whose decision will affect the common man on the street. Before we talk about the higher echelons of president, the House of Representatives and like. So have we produced enough people? Like looking at us now. Are we ready? Can we go and contest for councillorship? At that level. Let's look at our institutions. Do we have heads of departments who are godly, who are going to stand and fight against malpractice? Do we have members of boards of parastatals like in industries or organizations like JAM, like WAEC, like NECO, in the health sector who are going to stand and uphold righteousness? Have we produced enough people who can be appointed? I remember growing up, there used to be a similar situation where people were given jobs by virtue of the church denomination they attended because that particular dispensation proved that the church had integrity, the church had character. So now looking at our generation now, has the church produced enough people that can man these kind of positions and produce relevant change?
Okay, yeah, okay. I will speak with it from two sides. Yes. Currently, we have people who have been trained but yet to be deployed. But I will say that the church has not yet, we can't have enough of these people. So, national transformation is everybody's business. It's not just the job of a politician, it starts from the family. The family is the first foundational training center for every child. And leadership development is an ongoing process. We can't, we have not have enough, and we can't have enough until everyone have the sense of nationhood, until everyone possesses that, oh, I am a leader in my capacity. And leadership is not just, there are 5 levels of leadership, and the lowest level is positional leadership. Until we begin to see leadership as that I am living to influence others, I have a value to render. So we don't have enough people, and that is why we still need more people. We need to create more training programs, leadership training programs within the church and outside the church, so as to continuously bring out leaders. Now, in everyone, there's a leadership trait, and it goes beyond positional leadership. We need leadership in the home front. We need fathers and mothers who will rise up to their responsibility in training their children. And it is very fundamental because, see, a governor today was once in a family. And I would say a national problem today starts from a state problem. A state problem starts from a community problem. A community problem starts from a family problem. When a father and mother refuse to train, that is why when we are talking about the new Nigeria, we should talk about we being intentional in building the new breed of Nigerians that will make up the new Nigeria. So it starts from is everybody's business, and we cannot stop even when everybody has attained that level. We cannot stop. We need to keep reminding. Repetition is the key to mastery. So some people might have taken an emergency course to become a leader, but they need repetition. So we cannot. It's something that we must continually do from as long as we keep giving birth to children. We must be intentional about training the leaders in them, training the gifts, making them to see that, oh, you need to live. There's a standard of living for every leader. You are coming to lead yourself first before leading others. So leadership is about self-government before people government. So it's something that we continuously need to do. National transformation is everybody's business, and we have not yet. We don't have enough yet. We don't even have enough to occupy the seat of power yet. So it's something that we must be deliberate. We must plan about it, deliberate and intentional. Do leadership training across all levels, from the family to the school system, the media, the finance, the education, the governance. Is a continuous, like I call it, a continuous cycle. It's a continuous thing. That's even when we graduate from courses, we still go for advanced courses in the area of people leadership. So it's a continuous process. So we have not come to the end. So we cannot come to the end of training people in this national transformation.
So in essence, leadership is a continuous process. The process of making leaders to emerge starts from the family, and it will continue till death. And it should be a repetitive cycle. Thank you very much. Just now, you said something which I agree with, and I'm thinking, industries we have, industries have these training programs, internship programs, and then they have the what's it called, entry level training programs, and then they have the management training programs in such cadres, and then as people excel at certain levels, they are promoted to the next level till they have till they climb to management position. Can the church adopt such a strategy? There are organizations that have what's it called, a structure of growth. After a number of years, you are qualified to the structure, the hierarchy, and you can easily track how many years you need to work in an organization before you get to a certain position. Now, in terms of raising leaders, deliberate act of raising leaders, especially in governance and leadership in our nation and in Africa at large, can the church adopt a similar principle? We have something similar in terms of discipleship where we teach people foundational class, Bible studies, we look at like often at level. So can we adopt similar strategy? And if yes, how can we do?
Okay, the church can adopt a similar strategy. The churches, let me comment that some church has been doing well in that area, kind of foundational class, maturity class, leadership, trainings like that. And I know that there have been churches who I know maybe twice in one Saturday in the month, there's a leadership training program, for the church and everyone who willing to join. Yes, we can be intentional like that. That is why we need to the leader, I would say the leader of that organization must be deliberate to number one, identify people and put them in their area of specialty. What do I mean? Now, if we need to create a business group, yes, we create. If we need to create educational transformation group, we create politics and governance. We need to create those small clusters, those small groups, and then be intentional about the training, the quality of the training content. Now, the church may not be able to come up with the training material. That's why we can outsource. There are people who are already doing that. So we can bring them into the church. Yes, it will require all the investment of resources, but to the goal is very important, because if we make that investment, we can be sure that in the next 10, 20 years of consistency, we have built a solid and a vibrant community of people who have understanding first to take over the land. And that is why the scripture said that Paul was speaking to Timothy. He said, the things that you have learned of me, that you have received of me, he said, commit to faithful men who will be able to teach others. So, like how we say, as they said, if you want to transform 1,000 people, you need to start with one person. One person transformed and empowered can transform another person. And the cycle continues like that. So the church needs to adopt a system of cluster. That's my suggestion. Yes, we are still part of a big body, but let's break into different aspects, different areas as the mountain of influence, the arts and media, the educational system, and like that.
Then different areas. Let's break down the unit. Let's have dedicated arms of persons that focus on raising leaders within specific industries, especially in terms of nation building, because we can be very charismatic, but if we don't have good leadership to function, our charismatism can lead us into error, and it will lead to the waste of an entire generation who are burning for God, but are expending energy on what leadership should do. Because if the problem of leadership is solved, the challenge will be reduced drastically. We can now focus on ministry and spirituality, while we have those who are in leadership positions who are handling their faith very well. I want to thank you very much. Let me just have one more question before we call this the wrap up. Hopefully, scheduled for that opportunity. Now, this question is our generation. Do you think we are ready for leadership at national, state, you know, do you think, looking at the forecast 10, 20, 30 years from now, do you think we are ready? Do you think now ready may not be tomorrow we want to go and fight position? Do you think we are on the path, let me just really like
Okay, it's a very good question. Okay, and to be sincere, I will say that I'm not sure we are ready. Why do I say that? Um, with the thing I'm seeing in terms of people not no longer interested in personal development, like personal development. Now, it is hard today to see an average Nigeria asking that what is your personal development goal? Yes, I want to get a job. Yeah, I need money, 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 money. But if you have not built your capacity and platform is given to you, you misuse it. People who create change have already built their capacity. They see that, oh, yes, everyone has the capacity to lead, but it must be developed. So we say we are not ready because on a scale of, let's say, a scale of 0 to 10, I say our preparation level for it is still within 2 to 3. So what do we need to do? That is not what we need to do is to focus on personal development. Because it is hard for someone who has not lead himself to lead a particular a number of people. So it starts from our preparation in form of me leading myself. So this is the area of where why is personal development level low? This distraction called social media. Now,
yeah,
there's a good side of it, but an average Nigerian youth spend so much time in strolling through the social media without gaining the content they are consuming is not solid. If you get what I'm saying, it's not solid. And also, until we restore the culture of studying, that is, we being intentional about sitting down to study, not just to write any exam, not just to prepare for interview. No, 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 I'm not talking about that. The culture of we reading, studying to get knowledge, even studying. If studying is hard for us, it is hard for us to lead right. We will only be leading with empty heads. But knowledge, when we can get knowledge, it shows that we are ready. Yes, we cannot be 100% ready. We cannot be 100%. Can you see me?
no, yes,
Sorry. We cannot be 100% ready, but we can be sure that once we continue to submit to personal development and mentorship, and we can start testing our leadership ability uh, from this low level leadership, like not until we get to the presidential or national assembly, we are championing initiative, we are taking initiative in our workplaces, we'll be building our leadership capacity. But until we remove that distraction and be able to sit down to get knowledge, I don't think we can lead. And if we even lead, we lead with an empty head. And that is dangerous for a community, it's dangerous for a nation. So we must go back to the culture of studying to know, because everybody can talk about a problem, but we must study to know the solution to those problems. And it will take us to sit down to study personal development.
thank you very much, sir. Personal development So my generation, our generation assumed leadership will be handed over to us on a platter. And then just like the story of there's a popular story that was told of a man who has two sons. And then he said to one, he has a bright future, he really more interested on this thing. And he said to the other one that does not have a bright future, is going to be a failure. So while the one that was promised had a bright future was busy, gallivanting here and there, the one that was told didn't have a bright future, decided to go to a countryside and started to grow and develop himself when a form of purpose, sense of purpose that even if they said he does not have a bright future, is a failure, let him at least work to gain something. And then eventually the tables turned. It was the one that they said was a failure that became something significant because he didn't allow circumstances to define his future and he set out to work. And like you said, we need to develop ourselves, our generation, the mindset, the perception, the average person just wants to graduate at put up their CV, get a job and get money. They are not concerned about these areas of development. And that is the challenge, that is the problem. So we can keep shouting and saying the government is this, government is that. That is another subject in its own. But if it is handed over to us, do we know what to do? The Bible told us about the sons of Issachar who understood times. They understood times. They understood times. So this is a season of planting, a season of investment. And if we don't see this opportunity, I bet in the next 10, 20, 30 years, we will become the proverbial, ants in the next 20, 30 years who will be grumbling and telling the other generations that they should seize their future. Whereas in our own time, we are not even developing ourselves to come to capacity that if they give us a team of five to manage, we will not end up with blunders and mistakes. And a lot of us are running away from responsibility because we don't want to be in the spotlight. We just want to be behind the scenes and, we don't want that responsibility. We don't want anything that will stretch us. The average person will say that they don't like stress. I don't like stress. I just want to enjoy my life. And that is the problem. If we have people with this kind of mindset, this kind of perception, then we are heading towards doom and it is a problem. All right. Any final words? Let me end it here before I get into the Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes. My final thought is there's a lot of possibility for our generation, but crude oil in its crude state is not useful to anyone until it is refined. We need to work on ourselves to bring out the value that God has put in us. And we need everybody in this journey of building a great nation. National transformation is not just one man's business. Yes, there can be propaganda, there can be a manifesto, but it cannot be implemented by one person. So we must build our capacity as young ones and also contribute deliberately to the growth of our nation. That is how, and the church should be intentional, put in more resources in building I will call it a holistic believer and not just a church influenced believer. A holistic believer can work in any environment he finds himself. But if you have been just a church believer, you only the issue of denomination and the rest. But whenever you find yourself, God wants us to shine as light. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this section.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for joining us within the short notice and then the in the midst of the challenges we had before we started. I hope to have you again in a not so long time so we can keep having these conversations. And I believe that conversations like this are important to recalibrate the mindset of people, and that is basically one of it. most important things to do, because we cannot force or impose ideas on people. We just need to keep talking. That's why when you study the Gospels, the Bible said Jesus kept teaching them one thing. At the point, he asked the disciples and said, "Are you so slow to learn?" After he told them not to be carried away by the living of the Pharisees, and they were wondering if it's because they didn't carry bread. And he said to them, "Are you so slow? Did you not see that I just performed the miracle? And I'm not even talking about loaves." So we need to keep having these conversations to change the mind of the populace, to change the mind of we, the young boys, the teenagers, so that we can be ready and be prepared. I also want to appreciate you again and again for taking time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. It's great doing this with you. Thank you, sir.
Also, for those that are going to watch this video later on, want to implore them to like, subscribe, share, comment, and if you give us ideas, and everyone that will also want to be part of this series that we have started, and we want to make it continuous.